Media. As consumers, we are bombarded by it at every turn, like the Incredible Hulk being bombarded by gamma rays. But what makes some media endure, while others are banished to the forgotten black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again? Who or what decides this? Hetero life mates Steve and Yahel want to know, and they want to know now. This is Obscurity Now. Woo! What's up, Yahel? How's it going?
Hey, I'm good. High energy.
That's how I like to start out every show, you know. Plus, I've got a well-caffeinated beverage here to help with that. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Obscurity Now, where myself and my co-host Yahel here take a look at forgotten or soon-to-be-forgotten media, as well as more present...
Poetic.
Exactly. More present pieces of media that are soon to be obscure because we're all just dust in the wind, baby.
That's right.
Well, that's a good way to start
Carl
off.
Sagan couldn't have said it better himself. That's not a Carl Sagan reference, actually. He said we're all stardust.
It's Kansas, actually.
Yeah, they get confused a lot with a famous astronomer / philosopher / science fiction author, Carl Sagan.
So Carl Sagan and Kansas, one and the same. Well, we'll have to do or very similar people. We'll have to do a show about them someday, maybe, but probably not.
Probably not.
But yes, if you're new to our show, thank you so much for showing up. We are going to take a look at 90s superhero team cartoon shows. It's X-Men versus WildCATS versus Ultraforce. But first, we're going to take a look at some, what we like to call, hot topics.
Hot topic. Not cold, not warm, but hot topic.
Yep, this is a segment where we basically look at, just what's going on in the world of media right now. And I just need to get rid of this, and bam, there we go. Got our nice Hot Topics logo going on. And man, there was actually quite a few hot topics for once. Most of it involves like the release of cinematic trash or...
Cinematic trash.
Probably going to be cinematic trash. Only time will tell. I don't know. First up, the first images of Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe Netflix show has been released, and I have a few of those here somewhere. Just give me a moment to find them. Bam, there we go. There's a it's almost a synthwave looking Skeletor with that purple around him. But I guess since, He-Man is from the 80s, I'm sure they'll probably lean on that a little bit. However, I doubt that there will be a synthwave soundtrack, although couldn't hurt.
Who knows? Maybe in the new show's theme intro, like Skeletor drives a car into a neon sunset.
Oh my gosh! And then He-Man plays the guitar.
Yes.
Speaking of He-Man, there he is, looking as jacked as ever. So at least they didn't cut down on that. Although there's been a lot of talk about what the actual plot is going to be in regards to He-Man. And my question to you, Yahel, is: are you a He-Man man, Masters of the Universe guy? By the way,
I am a He-Man man. I loved He-Man as a kid. I had in Puerto Rico the giant gray skull. I guess it wasn't giant, but when you're a little kid, it seems like it's giant or whatever. But I had the big gray skull set that opens up, and there's like a trap door in it. And yeah, I was a huge He-Man fan. I like the 80s Masters of the Universe movie. I think it's like dumb fun. You got Dolph Lundgren. You got Tom Paris from Star Trek Voyager in it.
We only went... How long did we go before a Star Trek reference was made?
Less than 5 minutes, and I got a Star Trek reference in. No, but yeah, I like it. And honestly, I think from the images, I didn't read any of the articles. I just looked at the pictures, baby. And I don't know anything about the show other than the pictures, and I think it looks pretty decent. you expect it to have like a more modern take, right? I mean, you can't like exactly like make it look like the 80s and have kids nowadays be into it.
Or the
So
30-plus-year-old audience that they're trying to, appeal to. I
right,
mean, let's be
right.
honest. I doubt, some 6 or 8-year-old is really going to be interested in this. They might, but they're.
I think so. I
Uh,
mean, big muscles, a guy with a skull for a head. I mean,
I mean, how could you not be with that kind of pitch?
these are timeless.
Right. Well, I think people are just. I mean, and I agree with you. It looks amazing. I think
Hmm.
people are just afraid that they might, throw a bit of the old trickle in a bit of the old wokeness. And
I think that's really, it's one of those things where if people are looking for things that they perceive as being woke or anything else in whatever, they're gonna find it. You know,
True, true,
like
true. But I mean, I just, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with that particular, the wokeness. But remember that Transformers CGI one that they put out? I think it was last year. It's called like something of Cybertron. Did you happen to catch that one?
I didn't watch it, but I remember it existing.
Well, it looked cool, but oh man, was it boring? So boring. I mean, I just hope. I mean, I just hope He-Man doesn't go down that path. But it's the same studio that did the Castlevania anime. I really hate how
Mhm.
Netflix calls all their adult animation anime. I mean, it's
Anime,
not anime
yeah.
unless it comes from Japan. I'm sorry.
There's violence, so Netflix is like, oh, this is anime.
Right, right. Gosh, like, come on, Boomer, wake up. Am I right? But yeah, I mean, I will definitely at least watch the first episode and give it a shot.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot too. I am honestly more concerned that Kevin Smith is involved more than anything. I
I'm so glad you
I'm
brought
not
that up.
I'm not a huge Kevin Smith fan. At least modern day Kevin Smith. Even some of his older stuff, I think, is like pretty hit or miss. I think if you go back and you watch a lot of his classics, they don't, in my opinion, really hold up well.
They are of the time. They're not
Yes,
very
very.
timeless, and that begs the question: why is Kevin Smith the man to write the new Masters of the Universe cartoon?
Dude, I was hoping you knew because when I was scrolling down through some of the articles looking at the pictures, I was like, why is Kevin Smith here?
Mm-hmm.
He's not like some, I guess because he had that comic book show on
Comic book
AMC.
men,
Somebody was
sure.
like, oh, okay, this guy knows about He-Man who had a comic book for a while.
Allow me to answer this question, well, or to hypothesize, if you will. I mean, he's a name, and he's
Mhm.
a name that's built up a lot of equity. I mean, he has written a few comics here and there, never He-Man that I'm aware of. He wrote
Yeah.
Green Arrow and Daredevil for a while, like back when the characters, when like neither of those books were like those characters or anything, like nobody cared about him. So he was like, "Hey, I'll give it a go." And I remember trying to read his Green Arrow run, and I don't know if it was the character or his writing or what, but it didn't really do it for me. And
Mm.
this is, of course, well before that show on the CW. This is like back in, I don't know, late '90s, early 2000s or something. But yeah, basically, just a name that's still like dudes and I guess women in their 30 plus. They know who Kevin Smith is, and he's always synonymous with geek culture, even
Yeah.
though people seem to overlook that his last 3 to 4 films were abominable, like for the most
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's really only going to be people in their 30, maybe even like mid 30s
Mhm.
plus that really know and like him. I can't remember the last time, I heard some hip 20 something talking about the latest Kevin Smith joint. Uh,
Oh no, I was
that's what they say, right?
joint. Oh, for some reason he's always or he was always synonymous with marijuana as well back in the '90s. But I guess now it's all it's legal in most of the states, so I guess he's not really known for that as much
Yeah.
anymore. Uh, Dang, and I was trying to think of some hip YouTuber to say that I heard him talking about Kevin Smith, but I don't watch any of those, so I can't think of any names.
Jacksepticeye has been talking a lot about him, and
Yes, Jack Septic Tank. Yes, I remember him
the
well. Yeah.
as well as the kid with the toys, Ryan. the 7-year-old kid that's got the toy. I don't know. I think that's his name. There's some like kid with like 50 million subscribers or something crazy.
Oh, that kid with the face who's on all the kids' toy boxes and stuff.
Most kids have those.
Yeah, I imagine you would probably have those toys if they were around back in the 80s, right next to your Grayskull castle. I'm so jealous. All right, that's enough of this one. Okay, speaking of possible wokeness, I don't know. All right, so they released some on-set photos of Snake Eyes, which, no, this isn't the Nick Cage Snake Eyes, which I'm sure everyone was thinking about. This is the Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. He's getting his own origin movie. I don't know why it isn't called, Snake Eyes Origins. It's just called Snake Eyes. And, I mean, a lot of the OG Joe fans are pretty angry because, clearly Snake Eyes is Asian, and he was always a white guy ahead of time, or back in the day, I should say. I don't know. Were you a Joe guy, or were you ever? What do you think?
I watched. I watched G.I. Joe growing up, and I had a bunch of the toys, the little. I can't remember how many inches they were, but the ones with the rubber bands in the middle of holding the body together or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, who cares if he's Asian? I mean, who cares? I mean, I have no problem. You keep using the word woke, but I mean, honestly, who cares? There's been plenty of movies with all kinds of white heroes and heroes of other things. My concern is the script going to be any good?
Thank you.
Are the performances going to be any good? It's a movie in the G.I. Joe universe, so it'll probably be terrible no matter who is in it. So,
but the script is written by Quentin Tarantino, not. I'm with you there. I don't really care that he's. I mean, you could say that he's, Asian American, which I think that's what they're going for. I think another thing they're also concerned with is the fact that Snake Eyes keeps his face covered because his face is all jacked up. But I guess since this is an origin film, it'll be, Henry Golding will, fight his way to the last guy, and then, I don't know, he'll get an explosion in the face, and then he'll pick up the mask, and the music will swell, and they'll put it on, and everyone will go, woo! It's a thing I remember from a thing that I love, because he put on his mask, and then after that, maybe they'll just get some stuntman to play Snake Eyes, if they're going to continue moving forward. But yeah, good script would be nice, and also, good martial arts. I think, what every G.I. Joe fanboy from the 80s wanted to see in regards of the G.I. Joe ninjas is them sword fighting and getting cut and actually blood coming out. There's not gonna be any of that in this. I mean, sure, they're
rated PG-13.
Yeah, right? They're gonna sword fight, and it's all gonna be. I mean, I could see a Mortal Kombat level of fight choreography without even any fatalities or anything like that. It's I mean, they'll play it super safe to try to get as many butts and seats as possible. Yeah, and it'll probably leave you feeling flat like we did with Mortal Kombat. I mean, I want it to be good, but we'll see.
I think you're totally right. The fights are going to be pretty bloodless. Well, I mean, swords are notorious for being, unsharp, as we all know.
Right.
Dull, not unsharp. I don't think that's a word, but good thing I'm not writing Snake Eyes. There'd be a scene all about unsharp blades.
Well, if you get hired, you have to string me along. I'm just letting you know that.
Yeah, yeah. Don't worry. If I get hired, I won't tell anyone, and I'll ask for it not to be on my IMDb.
There you go. All right, moving onward to more kid trash. Venom 2 trailer released. What do you think?
I'm not excited about it. I didn't hate the first one as much as I thought I would, but I mean, I came into it just really expecting to hate it. So my expectations were very low, and I watched it on a flight. So
that helps. Yeah.
So yeah, that always helps. But I just don't care. I think Woody Harrelson is a weird choice.
I think he's actually a good choice, and that's actually the only thing that makes me. I don't even say I want to see it, but that's the one thing I find interesting because I usually like him in everything that he's in, and Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage, is like a redneck with a symbiote basically, and so who else do you get to play like a redneck rather than?
But how old is Woody Harrelson?
He's pretty old.
I mean, he's got to be at least in his 50s, if not like getting close to 60s,
yeah,
right?
well, I guess they're not thinking ahead for possible, franchise or
Are
trilogy
you
or
telling me
something.
the people behind the Venom movie franchise aren't thinking ahead, Steve?
No, nothing like that.
What a hot take.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, put that out into the internet, buddy. They have no idea what they're doing. But no, like the thing I didn't really like about Venom 1, and it looks like they're continuing with Venom 2, is that Venom is just so darn lovable. He's like Cookie Monster, and he's so funny. Like there's that scene in Venom 2 and he's like snatching snacks and stuff when they're in a convenience store or whatever, and it's like, oh, Venom, like you're so. It's like Alf. It's like if Alf were a symbiote. That's who Venom is in these movies, and I'm like, that's not the Venom I grew up with. Venom is like a scary. I guess they turned him into basically an anti-hero after the Maximum Carnage crossover, which I guess this is sort of leaning on, which you still can't have without Spider-Man, but somehow.
But in these Venom movies, I feel like they wanted to make him an anti-hero, and then they completely failed and just made him a bland hero, like about halfway through the first movie.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's weird. It doesn't really fit the character. So I almost think like they're like, well, I guess we have to make him lovable. Like I don't know, man. It's just weird.
It's for the kids. Like I get it. Like I like to pretend that there's an alternate dimension where David Cronenberg got to direct Venom, where it's way more messed up and like a body horror. But I know they're not.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Anyway, I think that wraps up like the hot topics. No other news happened in the world, only that stuff. So
Amazing.
We're going to move on to our next segment, and here it is.
Killing time.
All right, this is basically where we chat about like whatever media we're consuming ourselves, and I caught the show on Netflix, Jupiter's Legacy, which is actually based on a Mark Millar comic. For some reason, there wasn't a lot of fanfare with its release, so a lot of people aren't talking about it. So I thought that we could, and so yeah.
By the way, Venom is still up on the screen.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's not what I want. There it is, Jupiter's Legacy. Yeah, so I caught the pilot episode, and it's weird. It's like a show that's it looks cheap and expensive all at the same time, and it is super serious. And and like I was saying, it's based on a Mark Millar comic. Like, a while back he signed a huge deal with Netflix, and I guess this is the sort of the first child of that deal. That's a weird way of saying that.
Very strange.
But yeah. So did you happen to watch this as I asked you to?
No, I didn't watch it. In fact, I had not even heard of it. And I immediately thought that it had something to do with like Jupiter ascending, and I was like, "Oh God, did they turn it into like a series
that would be
or something
awful.
like that?"
Yeah. Well, this is definitely better than that. I'll say that. I'll tell you that. If you're looking for an alternative to like Marvel and DC shows, I could probably recommend it on that level. But it's just weird because like their costumes are so like comic book accurate, and it's just so serious that I sort of found myself chuckling a little bit and questioning. I'm like, is this like what's considered high art these days? Like it just
like does this show come off like it has a little bit of an identity crisis then almost? Like
no, it knows exactly what it wants to be. I just feel like I don't know. I think we're so we're so used to having one or the other. There's the very light Marvel stuff, or what used to be the super dark Snyder stuff. So I feel like maybe if the cinematography and the costumes kind of matched the tone of the show, it would be a little less laughable. But and also I think due to their lack of budget, because I read that Netflix like gave them the bare minimum of budget that they possibly could to produce this. Like the costumes, I'm like, are they trying to look cheap on purpose, or yeah? So it just comes off really weird, but it's just good enough to make me stick with it. So as I said, if you're looking for like something different, it's super it's still superheroes, so it's the same as superheroes, but I mean, you've got so much other stuff to choose from, like Invincible and The Boys, which is like so much better that maybe watch it after you watch those. Do you think you'll check?
What a not the glowing endorsement that they were hoping for.
Probably not, but based on that review, do you think you'll check it out?
No. Jupiter's Legacy. Come watch us. Third.
I mean, someone has to be third, right?
Yeah.
You should come listen/watch Obscurity now after Joe Rogan and after what's another big podcast? I can't think of one at the moment. Well, just watch Joe Rogan twice and then watch us.
One of those murder podcasts.
True
crime podcasts.
Yeah.
My favorite murderer, whatever it's called. That's a big one.
There you go. Have you been, I know you said you had a pretty busy week. Have you been dipping your toe into any new media of any kind?
Newish. Just finished up this week, Attack on Titan Season 4. It's the final season. However, they are splitting it into 2 parts, and I managed to avoid spoilers because they aired the final episode, I think maybe like a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. I was waiting for all the dub stuff to get done. And anyways, the final episode was not the final episode, so I was a little mad, but then I was happy because there were a lot of loose ends to tie up. But they switched production companies this season. I don't think you've been watching Attack on Titan.
I have not.
But you should. I think you'd really like it. But for this season, they switched production companies, so there's a bit of a different look aesthetically, and they made some choices with what elements to do in CG and which to keep animated by hand. But still looks really good. Show's really good, and that's what I've been watching.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. This was like a side topic I wanted to broach with you, and that is recently on the New York Times bestseller list, or maybe it wasn't that, but the top 10 sellers were all manga, and there were no North American comic or Western comics on there.
Interesting.
Yeah, what? Why do you think that is? If you just had to take a guess, I know you don't really follow comic book news and trends and stuff, but what's your guess as a layman?
I mean, anime's exploded the last few years in the U.S., so I'm sure that there's more people picking up mangas. And, Attack on Titan had its season delayed because of COVID, and it wasn't the only series like that. So I know a lot of people, to kind of keep, whenever the last season of whatever ended, they were like, well, I want more of it. So they went and started picking up the mangas,
Right.
So I'm sure that's a part of it. There's no major DC or Marvel movies out right now, and I don't think that there's any big crossover events in the books happening right now either. So I think it's kind of a perfect storm, because those crossover events, even though they're super hit or miss, they do sell books. So that is my guess.
I'd say that's a pretty accurate guess. I don't know. Some people say that they're still trying new things in Japan, and new titles come out instead of constantly rehashing the old legacy characters Batman and Superman, and like some of the like one team we're about to talk about over and over. But who knows? Only time will tell. And speaking of superhero, oh, actually, I do have one more piece of media that I'd like to talk about, and that is I happened across Highlander 2, the Renegade version on Amazon Prime. Yahel, are you a Highlander man?
I loved the TV series, and I liked a couple of the movies. I liked the one with Edge, because that movie's not good.
Edge is in one of them?
Yeah,
The
yeah, he's got
wrestler,
like a
right?
real small
Not
part.
from
Yes,
you
the
two?
wrestler.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Just clarifying that for the audience.
Bono decapitates Edge.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I think you must be talking about the fifth one, which I didn't watch because of I was told how terrible. Or is it the fourth one? Is Adrian Paul in it, or and Christopher Lambert?
I feel like I feel like it's the one with Adrian Paul, but I could be remembering this wrong. I saw it in theaters.
Whoa, whoa. Well, I mean, I saw Highlander 4 in theaters, but I would like to save our Highlander chat for like an entire episode. But I would specifically like to talk about Highlander 2, the Renegade version, because I don't know if you know or not, but Highlander 2 is like considered just a dumpster fire of a film. Like, and it's sort of lived in infamy throughout, I guess, the internet and geek culture, because like they decided to come up with a reason for why they're immortal, and that reason being is that they are from a planet, that they're aliens, basically. So yeah, oh, you did? Oh, you've got to watch it. You'll love it. I mean, it is.
I don't think that they mentioned that on the TV series, because I used to watch the TV series a lot.
Well, here's why. All right, everyone hated it. Like, I guess, the producers, they did a bunch of like coke, and Highlander 2 was born. So everyone hated it. So they came up with the idea to completely, axe out all the space stuff. And I think they did reshoots. And that got me thinking, oh my goodness. Highlander 2, the Renegade version, is the Snyder cut of the 90s. Tell me I'm wrong.
So this is the one with this dumb space stuff, is what you're telling me.
No, the Renegade version is the one without the space stuff.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is that it doesn't really fix anything. Like, the movie is still like so bad that it's hilarious. Michael Ironside plays the main bad guy, and he hams it up, like even to the level of cartoon. Like, he could fit in one of the shows we're about to talk about. And I can't recommend that you watch it.
I might have to check it out. Yeah, that sounds up my alley.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know if you could stomach like both versions like side by side, but maybe give it a day or two across or apart from one another. But yeah, like it is, it's awesome. I think like maybe we could do a watch party and like record the commentary or something, but we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, sure.
And that is the end of Time Killer, which leads us to...
Welcome to your feature presentation.
All right, and here we are in the Obscuritron Theater, so everyone can get a nice big glimpse of the beautiful artwork of the shows that we're going to talk about. And as I said at the beginning, we are going to be comparing and contrasting 90s superhero team cartoon shows. It's X-Men versus WildCATS versus Ultraforce. And before I go through and talk about the stats or the IMDb credits of X-Men, we're also talking about them in order in which they came out, because X-Men was released first. A year later was WildCATS, and then exactly a year later, Ultraforce came out at the end. I would like to know, Yahel, what is your history with the X-Men prior to this show premiering?
I was like a lot of kids in the 90s, just a huge comic book fan. So yeah, I mean, at that point, especially like Jim Lee's run, I think he had like the gold X-Men team. I was huge into X-Men books, and a bunch of other comics, but really X-Men. And I remember like when this came out, man, like I don't remember there being any kid that I knew that wasn't into this show. Like it was huge. And a lot of kids were already not just into the comic books, but like the comic book trading cards that would come out. I mean, it was really like a moment in time in the 90s when it came to like comic books. And this was possibly like the most perfect series to release at the time, the way it was made.
Yeah. Well, I wonder which one you're gonna pull for. No, I agree with you. Yeah, I was really into comics. Also, like a comic book store had just opened up in my neighborhood, so I was getting to experience the whole the whole world of actually having a comic shop with the trading cards and all the other great stuff. And yeah, and I was also reading. I'd say I was reading X-Men here or there. Like I didn't understand. There's a lot that I didn't understand about how comics worked, just because like I didn't. No one really explained it to me that it's supposed to be one continuous story. Like I was used to Archie, like before superhero comics, where
That's what I read before too.
Yeah, sure. Everyone did. Everyone did. There's no reason to be ashamed. Although I'll make
Oh,
sure
I'm not.
I'm gonna beat myself up after this though, just for being a big geek. But not really. But yeah. So I would like read one issue, and I'm just like, "Where's the rest?" And I'm like, "Crap, now I'm gonna have to go mow some more lawns to get some more cash to like figure out," which was the whole point, basically. And I think I even had X-Men action figures before the show even came out. So yeah, we were all real excited for the premiere of X-Men. And speaking of, we are looking at X-Men: The Night of the Sentinels, Part 1. Which, if you want to watch this before we talk about it, you can go watch it on Disney Plus. It premiered October 31st, 1993 on Fox. Do you think you actually like caught the premiere, like the day it came? Were you there watching?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
I think I was too, but for whatever reason, I think I missed the next episode. So when I came back, I was like really confused about what happened.
Because you're not a true believer, as Stan Lee required.
I guess. I mean, or I think I may have been playing soccer at the time, which is a terrible excuse for missing anything comic book related. But anyway, in case you've been living under a rock, the X-Men were created by artist Jack Kirby and the writer Stan Lee. And the synopsis for this episode is: a young teenager has been rejecting her mutant powers ever since she discovered them. But when giant robots track her down, it's up to the X-Men to save her. That pretty much covers it, I'd say. And the production companies were Genesis Entertainment, Graz Entertainment, and of course...
Graz.
Yeah, good old Graz. And everyone loves the Genesis, right? And of course, Marvel Enterprises. Writing credits, and they had quite the team of writers, and I think it shows, but more on that later. Mark Edward Eden's story edited by Eric Lewald. Bob Harras was the story consultant. And it says it was created by Margaret Leosh. And here's the cast, at least of the main X-Men. George Buza was the Beast. Or no, I'm sorry, it's just Beast. How dare I? Chris Potter plays Gambit. And do you remember him from Kung Fu: The Legend Continues? Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah.
That's him.
I didn't realize that's what it was.
That's him. And then later he was on Silk Stockings.
No wonder Gambit's such a smooth ladies man.
Exactly. Because of his Kung Fu.
Yeah.
And Allison Court was Jubilee. Iona Morris is Storm. Catherine Disher is Jean Grey. Ron Rubin is Morph, everyone's favorite. Cal Dodd is Wolverine. No one cares about him. Cedric Smith is Professor Charles Xavier. Norm Spencer is Cyclops. David Fox does the voice of the Sentinels, and Lenora Zan is Rogue. And there was like a bunch of other extra people here who did like extra voices,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't think we really care about
Tara
him.
Strong, I think, did some voices at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, so that pretty much covers that. I would like to know, before I give my thoughts, what your thoughts are on the very part 1 of Night of the Sentinels, that is X-Men Season 1, Episode 1.
You know, I think making Jubilee one of the central points of it was quite a risk because I don't know. I don't ever remember her at that time being particularly. I don't remember her being a very popular character, but like on paper it makes sense, I guess, because she's the youngest. This is geared towards kids, so we're supposed to identify with her, I guess, and like feeling different, and like your parents don't want you or whatever. I don't know, but I thought it was really good. You know, they struck a nice balance of. They talk about a lot of serious stuff, like the mutants are, you know, being treated, you know, poorly because of who they are. You know, there's a lot of allegories to real life social issues, and they do a really good job of balancing that with action, and just like a lot of like really nice world building. I think for like a first episode, it's great.
Oh yeah, that is the thing that I think separates this show from the other two, is that it's surprisingly like good writing, especially when the dialogue with the dialogue that's concerned, and also in the characterization, because like when you introduce a new character, they're supposed to be like doing something that represents their character. Hence, you get Gambit buying cards and hitting on a woman at the same time. When they get to the X Mansion, Beast is in there doing sciencey stuff, and also but then of course you get Storm and Rogue shopping, but then they're immediately shown to be strong, capable women when the Sentinels attack. And one thing that I thought was funny about that scene is that. And it's funny because they also do this in WildCATS, is like Storm somehow uses her mutant abilities to change her into her uniform. And for some reason, Rogue doesn't. Like, and then later on in WildCATS, like, spoiler alert, when Warblade changes into Warblade, the same thing happens. It's like underneath his skin was the Warblade costume. It's like, it's so weird, but I don't know. I guess you could pass that off as a trope of the time or something like that. There was some other sort of fun. I mean, I think, like you. I mean, Jubilee seemed like this. This was mostly based off, I'd say, via Jim Lee's. You said gold, but I think it might be blue. And like Jubilee was there, so when she showed up in the cartoon, to me it made sense. I mean, who would you, as far as the X-Men go, who would you rather have? Like maybe Iceman or something?
Like as the central, I'm just surprised they didn't go with like somebody like Wolverine as like the main focus for the first episode, because and these kind of things, and kudos to them for not going like, hey, let's take the most popular character, and make them the focus. Because I Wolverine, like, even though they do episodes like that focus on him throughout the series, you're also kind of limited because of it being a cartoon geared towards kids. You can't dive into some of the more serious stuff with him. So I guess they probably saw that they had a lot more room with a kids cartoon to make her like the jumping off point.
Yeah, she's relatable for kids. Like, of course, like, all of us, young preteen boys want to be a Wolverine or a Gambit.
Right.
I saw you making
Nobody
that
wanted
face.
to be Cyclops. I noticed you didn't say Cyclops.
No, I don't. But I don't know. As I get older, in some ways, I can kind of relate to Cyclops. But he's definitely not my favorite. That's for sure. But yeah, as far as some of the other dialogue that I enjoyed, again, I mean, I'm a big Gambit fan, so I'm going to be talking about him a lot. Like when Jubilee is like, "How did you do that?" And he was like, "With style, petite." Like, I was like, God, that's so good. Like, and this is what separates it from the other shows, is like, that's just sort of like witty. it's not overly comedic, and it's not like talking down to anyone.
Right.
And it just felt like, just watching that as an adult here in 2021, I'm like, that's timeless. That's the way all like superhero movies, shows, and comics like should be written.
Because they're showing you who he is rather than telling you.
Exactly, and that is a problem that runs rampant with the other shows. Let's see, I think a few more notes here. I thought it was funny when there was a scene when Jubilee, she's like walking down the street at night, and like the Sentinel steps out from behind a building, like he couldn't see him.
Yeah, he's just doing like a cartoon, like the thing against the wall.
Sure. And that's the thing that I think really sets the X-Men cartoon apart from the others. I should probably save this for the end, but it, like, the way it tells its story is very I don't know, I guess like cinematic, and they were smart to do 2 episodes. That way they can slowly unpack all the exposition and the information that you need over 2 episodes. It's not just them standing around talking about who they are and what they're going to do.
Some of the other shows that we're going to talk about, it feels like they're like in a rush to be like, okay, the audience needs to know this, so we're going to info dump it real quick.
Exactly. And yes. So let me see if there's anything else here before we move on. I'll just ask you right now while I'm looking, who is your favorite character and your least favorite character of this episode?
Oh, of this episode, I mean, probably Gambit. He's just like fun. I don't know if he was my favorite as a kid, but from this episode or whatever, I thought Wolverine came off like a little weird and annoying.
Oh,
like,
he was very emo for sure.
Yeah, like as an adult, I'm like,
like they were really,
loser.
They wanted to show you that so bad that he was a lone wolf. Like, it was really funny because he's like, I'm gonna find this guy the way I know how, and then leaves, and then they meet up later on in the episode.
Right,
like,
right.
Hey,
right.
Wolverine! Like, you should have just come along with us. Like, why pitch a big fit? Yeah, like, I don't know, my like, me and Wolverine, sometimes I'm like, yeah, that guy's awesome. And then other times I'm like, God, everyone likes him. I don't get it. Like, he's such a jerk. But
I think he's one of those characters that's like, if you get a really good writer, he can be amazing. But, he's a character that you have to like kind of tread lightly with how you write him.
Sure.
Because he can easily become a caricature of himself.
Oh, absolutely. But I think the cool thing about Gambit and Wolverine both is that their origins were both very mysterious for a while. And then, of course, they, I mean, I wouldn't say they ruined Wolverine with his origin, but it's just like, now you can't like make up whatever origin you want for him. And like, it is what it is. But, that's a great character archetype, is just, the mysterious rogue or anti-hero who's, you're not exactly completely sure if you can trust them or not. Those are the characters that I enjoy. I liked also at the beginning when Jubilee destroyed the VCR, just because it's a VCR. And
like I like that's like they don't implicitly say that that's what triggered her dad to call the mutant registration or whatever line, but it was definitely a factor. And the mom is like, "Are you sure that she's a mutant?" And he's like, "Did you see what she fucking did to the VCR? Like, I can't watch the Highlander Renegade."
Yes. Damn it, you beat me to it. It's like, I was gonna watch Predator 2 when you destroyed the VCR. Those things are like $500 in 1993. And that's back to Wolverine. Yeah, as you said, he's a bit problematic for a kid's show. Like, they go out of their way for him not to use his claws on like bad guys, and it's so obvious. It reminded me of when they made the RoboCop TV show. They went out of their way to make sure he didn't shoot anyone straight. Like, he always had to like. But anyway, we'll talk about RoboCop another time. So, who was your least favorite character?
I didn't really have anybody I like disliked.
Just say morph.
But if I had to pick one, I mean, I guess it would be Morph. But I mean, he grew like I probably disliked him the most in the first episode versus later on. I think he gets more tolerable later.
Does he? Because he came off like Jar Jar Binks in that first episode. But as a fan of the comics, like when he showed up, I'm just like, who the F is this guy? Like, he's not from the comics. And, you know, I still have that sort of attitude today when people like change stuff like that wasn't in the comics. But
you know, to their credit, introducing him in the show, spoiler alert for anybody who has never seen this show and wants to watch it, you know, they end up killing him.
Yes, they do.
In the series, which you never saw that, like on a kid's show.
Well, I wish you would have stuck with Ultraforce, because it happens in the second episode there too. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Well, anyway, my favorite character, yes, is Gambit. If I haven't said that yet, my least favorite is Morph, for sure. And it was great that they ended it on a cliffhanger, because it definitely made me, even now as an adult, made me want to watch the next episode.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So anything else to? I mean, we're gonna do the you know.
Yeah, we're gonna come back around to like the music
exactly
and,
at
like,
the
some,
end.
so yeah.
All right, so moving on to Jim Lee's WildCATS, which CATS is an acronym for Covert Action Teams. Again, Yahel, what was your history? Ironically, created by Jim Lee, which is the guy who many people say made, you know, the X-Men, his reimagining of them, as popular as they are. What was your history with WildCATS prior to the show coming out?
I bought every issue of WildCATS when it first came out. With it, I bought every Image comic book for like the first few years when it came out. Didn't matter who made it. Didn't matter how poorly drawn Rob's comics were. Because his writing was so bad, it would distract you from the poor artwork. But he's like not that bad.
Right,
but when he's bad, it's pretty bad.
Sure.
But yeah, I was into like Cyberforce, WildCATS, Wetworks, I almost said the Pit, Max, Shadowhawk. Like I was into all those things.
Well, Pit was a character too, though.
Oh, I thought Pit was Marvel for some reason.
No, Pit. I mean, he basically was the Hulk, just with claws and no nose. But yeah, the Pit was a guy.
Oh, okay. I thought that was Max or something.
They're
Anyway.
two different guys. They're both Image comics, though.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. When I started the episode of WildCATS, I was like, wow, I don't remember anything about this comic book. I remembered like Grifter's name and Maul because he's got the M on his forehead.
Yeah, very good.
But dude, like I couldn't remember anything about it going into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great.
So that tells you a lot about the comic book.
All right. Oh, I don't know if I'd say that. Well, yeah, maybe. So
it's not bad. It wasn't bad. Like I remembered I enjoyed the book, but I don't think it's.
I mean, it is
anything.
It's typical of Image where the art is amazing and the story was, but we'll talk about it in a bit here. Okay, so IMDb facts. Like here we go. Okay, WildCATS, which is an acronym for Covert Action Teams, created by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi. And if you would like to watch WildCATS before listening to us spoil it for you, it is on Tubi right now. And did you watch it on Amazon Prime or?
Yeah, I didn't know that this was. I tried like looking up like places to stream this for free, and I couldn't. I didn't know. I didn't check Tubi, even though now I think you told me it was on Tubi.
Okay, there. Then you've learned your lesson. All right, so the title of this episode is Dark Blade Falling. It aired October 1st, 1994, exactly 1 year. No, maybe not exactly 1 year, but almost entirely 1 year from X-Men. And it was produced by Nelvana and Wildstorm Productions, which, if you don't know what Wildstorm is, that's Jim Lee's like studio, who made WildCATS and produced a lot of other different comics, which he later sold to DC, which is why there are no more WildCATS comics. Although they did,
but the characters are part of the DC universe now.
Exactly, and you'll see something similar like that with Ultraforce when we get there. Okay, so this episode was directed by Bob Smith. I'm sure you're familiar with his work.
Yeah, Bob Smith.
Yeah, and the writing credits are John Bishmil, Brandon Choi from the comic, and Jim Lee. I imagine they sat in the writer's room, and Jim Schlute, who was the content writer. And for the synopsis, it's... rookie Reno Bryce joins WildCATS. The team agrees to call him Warblade.
What a shit synopsis.
Yeah, that's
Also, that's not exactly even that's not really what happens with his name either. No,
not really. So here's the greatest hits of people who are doing the voices here. This feels like a mistake, but apparently a woman by the name of Roscoe Hanford does the voice of Zealot. And
it's not a real name.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like IMDb, who knows? Also, I guess I'll describe the characters here in case you're not familiar with WildCATS. Zealot is basically a warrior woman from... I guess I should talk about the whole synopsis of the WildCATS themselves. And that's basically like there's aliens who came down and crossbred with human DNA, and that's why some people have powers. And in order to fight the evil Daemonites, who are basically like they're kind of like xenomorphs, except for they just sort of jump in and get no, they're like the Brood from X-Men. Do you remember the Brood?
Yeah.
Yeah. They basically jump into human bodies and take over them and make them do bad things. So there you go. So yeah, Zealot is basically sort of like a warrior woman archetype. Like she knows how to fight the Cherubim style, which is the name of the alien race that the WildCATS crossbred with the humans. Void is their living computer, and she was voiced by Janet Lane Green. Voodoo is, I don't know, how would you describe her? She's kind of like a psychic, basically. Very similar to Psylocke. Was voiced by Ruth Marshall. Marlowe is basically the sort of like the Professor X of the group. Instead of being handy capable, he's a little person. And he's rich. He's really, really rich. And like
his real superpower.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like the I don't know, the chosen one of the Cherubim, or like an emperor or something. I barely remember. Dean McDermott voiced Warblade, who was basically the Wolverine of the group, except for his like hands are basically liquid metal, so he can make as many claws as he wants. Maul is a Hulk style guy. He's purple for some reason, and they even tell you this in the cartoon. The madder he gets, the bigger he gets. And Grifter, who is very similar to Gambit in the way that he's kind of mysterious, was voiced by Colin O'Meara. And I just remember he's the only human who was ever trained to fight like a Cherubim, for whatever that means. And Spartan is their leader, their Cyclops. He's voiced by porn star Rod Wilson.
Really?
I don't know if the guy's an actual porn star or not, but that's his name. And Spartan's thing is that, and again, he blatantly tells you that he is a cyborg. And the villain, Hellspawn, is voiced by Maurice Dean Winter. And I don't even know how to describe Hellspawn. He looks really cool, and he's just the head of the Daemonites. So Yahel, what did you think of WildCATS Episode 1? What was it called again? Dark Blade Falling.
Yeah. Not bad. I remember watching the show a little bit here and there as a kid, but not like religiously. I thought... I guess I'll wait to talk about the theme song because it is It is. You know, the X-Men theme song is very memorable because it's so good, and the
Epic.
WildCATS theme song is memorable for other reasons.
Yep. Oh, that's exactly what I wrote in my notes.
It's like three other songs in one. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I was actually surprised at how the animation's pretty good quality wise. Pretty close to the same quality as you see in X-Men, I would say. The dialogue, not so much.
No, definitely not.
There's a few scenes with like info dumps that I was not crazy about. Like the scene when Zealot, Spartan, and Grifter, when we first introduced them, they all like go out of their way to say each other's name awkwardly in conversation, and
Yeah.
it's just like,
I know
don't
exactly
like-
what you're talking about, Yahel.
right, exactly. So I don't know. It was there's a lot more like cheesy 90s like action movie dialogue, like B movie dialogue in this that I thought was like really off-putting. Like Warblade and Grifter, like they have this like tension throughout it, but then it gets resolved like in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was, you know, as an adult, I don't think it holds up well.
No.
You know, as a kid or whatever, if you're 10, 11 years old in the 90s, I'm sure you would have liked it or whatever. But then again, I remember like not being into this enough to like watch it episode after episode on like X-Men, where I couldn't wait Saturday mornings to like see the newest episode.
Right. Well, I remember being into it pretty hardcore. It's because, like yourself, I was really into the comics, and also I think there's a little bit of there was a point in time where people used to want to be into like the next new big thing, you know, before like they stopped making new stuff. So it was kind of like, ooh, there's a new superhero team on the block. See you later, X-Men. Although I'm sure I still kept watching. It's like, time to watch WildCAT. They're extreme. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching it and probably being like, sort of maybe lying to myself a little bit and being like, it's just as good as X-Men, but maybe not understanding why it actually wasn't, just because of like the writing. I'd like to introduce you to a literary term that you're probably familiar with that gets overused a lot. I think it pretty much got used in all of these episodes, and that is soliloquy. And I hate it. And that is when, in case the listening public here doesn't know, that is when a character basically speaks his thoughts so the audience can hear them. And Warblade does it like all the time. And there was even a few minor instances where Jubilee does it then, but like it was I'm just like stop, and like it was just a little bit with her, but there was like tons of soliloquy with Warblade. He's just like, yeah, I'm over here doing science stuff. Oh, and they lacked a lot of the characterization that X-Men does. Like, you see Reno Bryce doing science stuff at the beginning, but then after that, all of the WildCats show up at the same time in uniform, and just then they stand around and explain things, basically. Like, you know, they could have had them show. I remember in the comic they were revealed like a lot better. Like one would show up a little bit later than the others. I mean, in the original first issue, you know, voodoo was like the point of entry basically for the audience. But, you know, Grifter had to go to a strip club to recruit her. So you're not going to do that on the...
Oh, man, I do remember that.
Yeah, and then and then later like Zealot shows up and saves them, you know, blah blah blah. I mean, I read that comic.
So what you're saying, Steve, is that they should have had a strip club scene on this kid's show?
No, I'm saying they should have just had better characterization. Like they could have had like, you know, Reno. They should have they could have had Warblade running away from the Damonites, and he like falls down at like or runs past Grifter, who's like, I don't know, like pulling a con on some guy out on the street or something like that. And then like later he's like, oh, that's the guy I was here to get. And like grabs him, and then they run into the other WildCats. Like, but no. And this is the mistake that they made, is that they gave you everything in the first. They showed you all their cards up front in the very first episode, and there wasn't even like a part 2. And I wrote. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just like, no, I forgot what I was gonna say. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, to me, if I was gonna describe the writing on this show, at least the first episode, it can be described in one word: impatient.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, they were just like you said, they were just like, okay, we gotta hurry up and get this out. And some stuff I understand them explaining, like when they explain the war from thousands of years ago or whatever, and they show like that little scene. I get that you have to like have the character standing around and explain that. But at that point, they had already like had those kind of explanations like 4 or 5 times.
Right.
So it's like, Jesus, again,
Yeah, they made the big mistake was they told and didn't show, or they tell. Yeah, they told and didn't show. As you said, the WildCATS looked great. I mean, they looked straight out of the comic.
Yeah.
But there was very little story to move them forward. And that's like what a lot of those 90s Image comics are known for. Although if you wanted to go back and read WildCATS, if you read like WildCATS Volume 2 or 3 by Joe Casey, like that guy, he took a hold of WildCATS and turned them into like something special. I mean, it's not your basic superhero stuff at that point. But yeah, I think that is pretty much at least my thoughts for episode 1 of WildCATS. I mean, they even went to their main WildCATS villain at the end of the episode and had like a really forgettable like confrontation with him.
Yeah, I actually had made a note about that because basically, kind of like you were saying about them showing their cards, they show you in the first episode at the end of it that Maul can basically defeat Hellspawn at any time by himself.
Yeah, that was so
he literally
bad.
Hellspawn's supposed to be like the big bad guy, and they talk about him a couple times throughout the show as they imply like that they've never been able to face. Actually, right after they come back from facing him, their leader is like, "Wait, you faced him and you actually beat him?"
Right.
Like he's like shocked. But really, all that Maul did was he can make himself grow, made himself grow to like 30 feet, grabbed him, and like he was just like in his like hands like King Kong holding like a human, and like he couldn't do anything. And at the end, like he's even like he puts him back down. He's like, "Oh, word of advice for you: when a 30-foot guy picks you up, don't listen to him," or something.
Oh man!
Like all that was missing was him patting him on the head.
Yeah, Maul's catchphrases were like the worst. Yeah, nobody had anything like nearly as witty to say as the X-Men did. I just remember, like Maul didn't even talk that much in the comics. Like he was just go, "I'm large and in charge." Like, well, which one is it? And then later he's like, "Yeah." I'm like.
I thought in the comics he got dumber the bigger he got.
Yeah, that was part of it too. I mean, I guess they just ran out of space for them to explain everything to us.
But they just made him, because they do say that he gets madder the bigger he gets.
Right.
But we see him totally in control of himself every time he's big. So
yeah.
Again, they're telling us, not showing us.
Yeah, that also. Well, it was weird. Like with Spartan, there was a few instances where. There was obvious that there was something up with him, that, he wasn't human. And then, technically when a robot or a cyborg like gets revealed, like it's like, Terminator style, where an explosion like blows off half their face, and then in slow-mo they turn to the camera and you're like, "Oh crap, that guy was a robot the whole time."
Yeah.
We don't get nothing like that here because that would cost money. I remember they were just like, "Why couldn't the Daemonite possess you, Spartan?" I think that was Voodoo who asked him. He's like,
yeah.
And he just looks at Voodoo and just goes, "Probably because I'm a cyborg." Like, it's the most anticlimactic writing you could possibly come up with. Oh man. And I think he was even revealed. I remember the way he was revealed in the comic was like almost like Bishop from Aliens 2, like. I don't know, someone like blew him apart, and I was like, "Oh crap, that guy was a robot." But I don't know, maybe the TV guys like sort of elbowed Jim Lee and Brandon Choi out of the way, and they were just like, no, we're gonna tell the story, old school Hanna-Barbera style, and just like just have a one and done where they, manhandle their main bad guy and make him look weak, and then that'll be that. But
Very, very weird, man, because you would think like they were trying to capitalize on the popularity of the X-Men cartoon, and you would think that they would like want to more closely mimic that, because like on that cartoon, like there were villains that came off like serious threats, like Mr. Sinister, I remember, was like
yeah, nightmare
seemed
fuel.
unbeatable. Yeah. And here, nah.
Yeah, and that's a shame because I always thought Hellspawn looked awesome, but
Yeah.
we'll talk more about that in a bit. Anything else about WildCATS before we move on to Ultraforce?
Nah, I'm good.
I'm done. That's it. I'm leaving the world of streaming podcasts. Okay. Up next, we have Ultraforce by Malibu Comics, which I'm sure many of you have never heard of. Let me find my notes here. Well, while I look, I'll just ask you, because I know your answer is pretty short. What is your experience with the Ultraforce and/or Malibu Comics?
I mean, I read like I would occasionally like pick up an issue of Malibu comics of something, especially when they had the Star Trek comics.
Yes. Ding ding. We gotta have like a sound effect whenever you
Right.
mention Star Trek.
Dude, there's been several other references I almost made, but I
Do it.
held down.
Why not? Just do it.
But I mean, I remember like seeing Ultraforce like advertised like in Wizard and talked about, but I never read it. And man, if it's anything like this cartoon,
Yeah,
glad I did
it's
it.
not the best representation, and I'll just go ahead and tell you my history, and that is I loved the Ultraverse and Malibu Comics. I was before the Ultraverse was built or created, like they had sort of a few titles scattered around, the Protectors and Dinosaurs for Hire and X Mutants. I didn't really read X Mutants, but I love those. I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that, like, with Marvel and DC, there's so much continuity. And even like by the time I started reading in the 90s when Image came out, a lot of those books, a lot of the number ones were considered rare and expensive, and were kind of a bit of money for a young lad like myself who had to mow lawns to support his comic book habit. So, you couldn't start with issue 1. So along comes the Ultraverse, where number ones were plentiful. And like that was like their marketing campaign was jump on now. And there's actually a hilarious commercial that they used to run, I guess, on TV. But we're going to have a whole episode, devoted to the Ultraverse at some point. But here we are talking about Ultraforce Episode 1, and I'm pretty sure I caught the premiere of this and was very excited for it at the time. And you can watch it on Tubi, much like WildCATS. And so it's called, the name of the episode is Prime Time. And the original writers of the Ultraforce comic were Gerard Jones. He was the writer, and George Perez was the artist. They did the numbers 1 through 12. The show debuted October 22nd, 1995. 1 year after WildCATS and 2 years after X-Men, so they were a little late getting started, and premiered on the USA Network. And this particular episode was written by Martha Moran, or Moran, probably. Production companies were Deke Entertainment. They're famously known for ruining G.I. Joe. And Malibu Comics Entertainment, which, as we just said, is the name of the comic book company who created the Ultraverse. Episode plot is: when a dinosaur-like robotic creature known as Enemy starts attacking U.S. Army bases and stealing missiles, a group of heroes, including Hardcase, Prime, and Prototype, team up to stop it. And some of the voice cast includes, and I'll also talk about the characters as well, is first Pix. She's basically the Jubilee, except for she does computers, and she was voiced by Allison Court. There's a member who doesn't even appear in this episode named Topaz, who is basically like a zealot, basically. But we don't even need to talk about her because she's not in the episode. Contrary is like Professor X if he were an attractive blonde woman. And she's the one who brings the Ultraforce together. Prototype is influenced by Iron Man. He's basically a dude in a suit, and he was voiced by Reno Romano. Prime is, if you're not familiar with Prime, he is basically a sci-fi version of Shazam. He's a little boy who was experimented on when he was still, in his mother, and he just creates this like weird biomass around him that turns into like a little boy's idea of what a superhero should look like. So that's why he looks like roided out, like gas to the gills, as they call him.
Yeah, definitely gas to the gills.
Yeah, and he was voiced by President Andrew Jackson. He came back from the grave just to voice Prime. Ghoul, who he looks like the Crypt Keeper basically, and he can talk to the dead, and they don't really show it in this episode, but he can also swallow people's souls. Isn't that like fun, kid-friendly stuff?
Yeah, and he smells apparently.
And yeah, well, he is a rotting corpse. And last but not least is Hard Case, who is almost like a Wonder Man in the way that he is an actor, or he's a movie star, and here they're not called superheroes, they're called ultras, but he's different from Wonder Man in the way that he was on a super team first before he became an actor. And as it shows in the beginning of this episode, his team is basically killed off by Enemy, this monster-looking thing. And he's voiced by, he's got a double header here, our porn star friend Rod Wilson.
Oh,
yeah, he's
Rod,
back again.
making the rounds.
He's double penetrating the animation world. So let's see. Oh, Yahel, what? I'm sorry you couldn't get through the whole episode, but that's not your fault. It's Amazon Prime's fault. Stay your tongue, mortal. What was your thoughts on the Ultraforce? Choose your words carefully.
Everything felt, a lot like WildCATS. Mm-hmm. Like, man, they have like all the pieces for like a great show, mm-hmm. but it felt rushed. Like everything felt rushed. In fact, I actually started thinking that I was like watching like the wrong episode, because episode 1 started off with a previously on Ultraforce.
What? Are you sure you watched the right one?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Like, I looked and it was the first episode. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I'll look it up here.
What happened in the first scene?
I don't even remember, because they were showing what happened last time. And I was like really confused. But in this episode, it's the one where like the nuclear warheads are like launched, and like one's going to Alaska.
You watched part 2.
So I watched part 2 of it. That was the first episode listed as the first episode on Amazon Prime.
Wow. Well, okay. So in the first, what's up?
So maybe that actually might explain some of the things I didn't like about it, was everything felt like I was like in the middle of something, which can actually work sometimes if you
absolutely.
Write it for that, which they didn't, so I was like, what the hell is going on here? But even so, I don't know. I just felt like everything was like a little on the nose, like especially with Prime. I get that he's supposed to be annoying. I get that he's supposed to be an obnoxious kid or whatever, but it was like a bit ridiculous and like very inconsistent. Like 1 second they'd be like, we need him. The next one, like, forget him. Then the next scene, they're like, you know what? We do need him for this other threat.
Right. Well, unfortunately, I didn't watch the second episode. But yeah, in the first episode, we didn't even get to like. Did you even know that this show even existed before I asked you to watch it?
I think I had heard of it before, yes. Because and I've read I think I've read an issue or two of Prime a long time ago, Like I'm talking like 2005 or something. Like I got like a bunch of scans of Ultraforce.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe you recommended
Yeah,
I start reading them.
probably.
And I think I tried it out and I wasn't
Uh-huh.
crazy about it. But you know what's funny is when I started watching it before like my memory was jogged, I thought Prime was like Supreme from Image Comics.
Great.
I was like, oh wait, no, this is Malibu Comics.
Right,
But,
right.
So maybe you should give your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, see, I think, okay, they did a lot of things right, I would say, story-wise. The animation is pretty bad at times.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it was even below, WildCATS, which here we are, 2 years from the premiere of X-Men. You would think they would want to do it right, if not better. So, you could try to attract the X-Men audience, but who knows what was going on with their budget. Like another thing with Ultraforce is that they are basically the Avengers of the Ultraverse. Like all of these characters like have their own comic and origin as well. And in the very first episode, they actually they do a good job, again with the characterization like X-Men did. Like they show Prime dealing with his parents. They show Prototype dealing with the corporation who owns the Prototype outfit, and it actually opens with Hardcase. He's having a nightmare about when his original team was destroyed by Enemy, who was definitely not inspired by the xenomorph alien. Did you get to see him in the second episode?
I think he was on the previously.
Okay, so yeah, you saw
okay.
that. So they at least have that right, and there's a lot less soliloquy than there was in WildCATS.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where I think that the writing was decent, but I don't know why the animation was so bad. And yeah, the characters, like Prime is so much better in the comic than he is here. It's let me see. Let me refer to my notes here. It is oh yeah, the theme song. That's something else. Oh, and another thing I like about what they before every episode of Ultraforce, it would say who the TV writer is and who the comic book writer was. So it says like
interesting.
inspired. Yeah, they were really creative focused at Malibu Comics. Too bad they didn't last. But more on that later. Let's see here. They show Prime or little boy. Yeah, but I already talked about that. Talked about Contrary. Yeah, the voice acting I didn't think was very good for a lot of the characters. Mm-hmm. Like, for some reason, Prototype has like a New York accent.
They obviously spent all their money on blew it all on Rod.
Rod Wilson.
Rod Wilson.
You're gonna say Rod Serling.
Yeah.
They dug up his corpse and had him write Ultraforce. Yeah, I mean, basically, I just have a sort of a rundown here of the episode, which that's not really opinion. But I thought the main villain was pretty generic, like underground dwelling mole people. Like, that's what the Fantastic Four were fighting like back in the 60s.
So that's not from the comics?
No, it is. This is very similar to Ultraforce #1 in every aspect, including killing off a child in the second episode, which I don't think you got to. Because
no, I wish I wouldn't have cut off.
Because much like in the with Morph, Pix sacrifices herself to save the team or the world, something like that. And I'm just like, dang, like you killed off a child, man.
That's why I was on USA on the same cable network that brought you Silk Stockings.
Why couldn't they get Chris Potter in? I guess he still had his X-Men contract going on.
Too busy having near softcore porn levels of love sex on Silk Stockings.
Yeah, speaking of like softcore porn, oh man, the way a lot of these ladies dressed in both WildCATS and this episode and Ultraforce, like, you're not going to
It's
be
the 90s.
yeah, you're not going to be seeing that again anytime soon.
Oh man, remember like in the 90s they had those like awful swimsuit issue comics
Yes, I do.
too.
All too well.
It was like, dude, even as like a young teenager with a mustache and raging hormones, I was like, yeah, this is it's pretty weird.
Well, yes, it was an interesting time for sure. Man, I don't really know what else there is to say about Ultraforce, except for I would say that it's a collection of interesting characters that you should probably go read their comics, their solo comics, and not watch this show because.
Another glowing review.
But I mean, I would say I did enjoy watching it though. I mean, there are things about it that I think slightly elevated above WildCATS, at least writing wise. But then there's the animation that isn't so great.
So would you say that this is a recommendation for somebody who's already read the comics and or is already coming from they would enjoy this more than somebody coming in, sight unseen or sight unread, I guess, when it comes to the comics?
Right. Yeah. If you're watching this, it's because you're probably a hardcore Ultraverse fan. I mean, even the fans in the Ultraverse Facebook group, which if you're listening, thank you. Even they admit that it's not the best. And I mean, and here I am. I mean, I'm a self-proclaimed Ultraverse fanboy, and I'll admit that it's not the best. It does get better though. Yeah. If you stick with it,
you're gonna get kicked out of the Ultraverse Facebook group.
No, there's people in there who are way more critical than I am. There are other episodes where other Ultraverse characters show up, like the Nightman. I don't know if you remember him. And no, it's not the Nightman from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He existed prior, and there's actually a Nightman show. We can talk about that another time. And the animation gets better. It would be rough. It would be a hard sell for someone who wasn't into the comics to make it past this pilot, unfortunately. Yeah, so if you want to get into the Ultraverse, just start with the comics because they're plentiful and you can usually find them in any like 50-cent to $1 bin everywhere. And that's not a knock. That's just how it was because in the 90s, people printed the crap out of everything.
Yeah.
But prices are going up for some things. I have here a box of Ultraverse cards unopened. And this was $30. And some guy tried to sell me one for $90. I also actually have the Ultraverse action figures, not handy to show, but I'd say the figures were probably better than the show. Start with the comics, get into it, and then watch this last. That's what I'd say.
Okay.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
Oh, no. I think you were about to go on to the section where we discuss what we thought the best song, best writing, etc.
Right. Yes. Now for the moment that you've all been waiting for. You know what? We're going to go back to the main screen. There we go. To where the chat was, because there was no chat in the theater.
I don't think anybody's.
Aw, that's too bad. That's their loss.
Yes.
And, okay, so we didn't talk about for WildCATS who your favorite character was and who your least favorite character was.
Least favorite character, Reno Bryce / Warblade.
That's just a douchebag name.
Yeah. All his lines, lame as fuck. If he wasn't there, it would have been Grifter. But because he's also pretty annoying.
Aww.
He came off like a cheap, like they were trying to make him Gambit,
I mean, I would say he's definitely derivative. I mean, it's that archetype of mysterious. Right. Yeah.
But you're right. He's supposed to be like some mysterious loner type character, but he's also all about the team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Weird.
That's just crap writing again, as we were saying earlier.
Yeah. I guess if I had to pick a favorite character, I mean, I guess Maul. I don't know. Like,
Really,
he
Maul? Oh.
because like he says this one thing like at the beginning where like he and Voodoo are like in an alley and like a bunch of like demonites like are coming towards them, but they're like, you know, in their human form, and like she says something like, oh, they're demonites, and like with her power, and Maul's like, yeah, no shit. You know? Like, he doesn't say no shit, but he says like,
Right.
yeah, no kidding. And I just thought it was like a funny, almost like fourth wall breaking like thing, like where it was clearly like, we want to establish her power, so we're gonna do this thing, and he's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Like earlier when I asked you who your favorite X-Men was, I mean, do you have a favorite of all time that wasn't in that episode? Because it looked like you were going to tell me somebody different, maybe.
You know, I've never really had a favorite. I like Jean Grey a lot, actually.
Oh, that's odd, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just always like, I've always thought her character was interesting. Like, again, she's another one of those where she can be so powerful that you need like a good writer.
I mean, how many times
writing.
has she become the Phoenix? I mean, my goodness.
Right. Right.
All right. So your favorite character was Maul, and your least favorite was Warblade. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite because the character.
Well, you got to remember, Steve. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you got to remember, Maul barely says anything, and every time somebody opens their mouth on this episode of WildCATS, it's terrible. So that makes him also like my favorite because he barely says anything.
Maul says all kinds of crap. I mean,
But they're just like quick one-liners. He doesn't
right.
sit there and have like long monologues.
Sure. It's soliloquies, you mean?
Soliloquies, yes.
Well, my favorite always will be Grifter. I mean, just like I said earlier, like, I mean, the WildCATS were just a bunch of really cool-looking people that really didn't have, I mean, and I'd say the premise for them is pretty good, but, you know, those Image comics, when they first came out, they definitely weren't about the writing. And yeah,
Right.
I could see how someone would be annoyed by them in that show, but yeah, Grifter was always my favorite, and still is at this point. And my least favorite, I think I actually did pick, was Maul, just because all of his like catchphrases were so lame. But whatever.
Spartan was real boring.
Yeah, he was. Well, that's because I'm a robot. But that's the work of Rod Wilson. I'd like to see his other work. Not really, but okay. Ultraforce. Even though you only saw like half the episode, could you like venture who your favorite character versus least
I mean,
character?
I didn't mind Hardcase. He was all right. I wasn't crazy about I forgot his name, the rotting corpse guy.
Ghoul.
But I don't know. I just thought it was like kind of lame. It came off because I didn't read the comics. To me, it like reminded me of like some kind of like ghoulish type character that they would make to sell like kids' toys or whatever, and you get the toy and you squeeze him and like ooze comes out of him or something.
He's the Crypt Keeper, which is why he's my favorite.
Hey, fair enough.
And who was? Oh yeah, least favorite was Ghoul. Yeah, he was my favorite in the show. Like Hardcase. I mean, all of them are so much better in their respective comics, but I like Ghoul just because he reminded me of the Crypt Keeper, and his like one-liners even further reminded me of the Crypt Keeper. And my least favorite was, I think, Prototype, and that mostly just has to do with the fact that I've never been a fan of like dudes in suits. It's like, oh, you're just a dude in a suit. If I had that suit, I could be just as cool as you. So yeah, there you go. So now I guess we'll go with all right, rank them in terms of writing.
I mean, X-Men.
Sure, X-Men's 1. Who's your number 2?
I mean, based on what I saw today, WildCATS.
All right.
But I mean, just barely.
Sure. Like, I mean, X-Men is obviously number 1. I actually put Ultraforce as number 2, and then WildCATS number 3. Okay, so that leads us to the themes. Oh man. So I obviously go ahead. You first.
Can we talk about the themes before we give our ranking?
Let's do it.
So everybody knows the X-Men theme. I don't think we really need to discuss that one.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Everybody knows it. the WildCATS, dude, that's all I really want to talk about. It is so ostentatious.
It's
Like,
it's so like it goes around again. It's like so bad that it's almost good.
yeah, like I don't even know what genre I would say it's in, but the rapping in like the
Oh,
middle
that's
of
so
it,
bad. Like, I mean, they just tried to throw everything in there that they thought kids would
yeah.
like. There's like guitar riffs, and they're like, well, what else do kids like? Oh, I know, rapping. I mean, it's
And it was like Ace of Base rapping, like just like that's what it reminded me of, like that horrible Scandinavian white guy. Like
we're heroes, not zeros. That's like the worst. Oh man, they might as well have been saying,
you could almost hear a metronome in the background, like that he's desperately trying to keep up.
my name is Grifter, and I'm here to say I love shooting things in a major way. Like it's so bad that it's almost good. Which I mean, that's what I think. Oh, I mean, all right, we haven't gotten to that yet. I mean, is there anything else to say more about WildCATS?
The music throughout WildCATS was pretty bad. It sounded like 90's royalty free
Oh, sure.
hard rock guitar songs, like whereas X-Men, and maybe X-Men uses royalty free stuff too. I mean, I don't know, but it sounded like it was scored.
Yeah.
X-Men.
Yeah, yeah.
And this was just like, oh, pick a track, throw it in. There was constant music all throughout the WildCat show. And Ultraforce, I thought, like, was more tasteful with their music throughout the episode.
The however, the Ultraforce theme, I mean, you mentioned the term, royalty free. I mean, that just sounds like they found someone's sort of like generic commercial techno track, and then they just got a guy to go Ultraforce over it and over again. However, I mean, for a commercial, piece of like techno, I mean, crap, it's not like awful. I mean, basically the way I looked at all three themes, I'm like, what could you go to like Guitar Center and like play as a riff, and someone would be like, oh, I know that song, and the only answer is X-Men. So of course X-Men is
but which one could you rap?
You could
and no one still would know what.
I think you might be able to rap over the Ultraforce theme. You just have to slow it down a little bit. So I guess the question is, what gets the number 2 spot between WildCATS and Ultraforce?
Well, like you said, the Ultraforce theme, it's not bad. It's just
forgettable.
It's bland, forgettable, yeah. And the yelling of Ultraforce kind of reminded me of the Mind Freak theme song, where like they just yell the Chris Angel Mind Freak theme
that's
song.
awful.
It's just like Mind Freak.
Oh my god.
I don't know. I would say number 2 for me would be WildCATS. They A for effort.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
too much effort.
Yeah, they put a lot of 60-year-old guys put a lot of thought into that song. And they were probably just like, well, what are the kids like these days? And so I'll agree with that. So it goes X-Men theme, WildCATS, and then just below them is Ultraforce. So that leads me to, I don't even know if I gave you this one to choose. Yes, I did. It's right here. Best villain.
Man, I would actually go with I want to say Hellspawn, because I just think he's like the coolest designed villain out of the pilots. But he gets defeated so easily, so poorly. But I still think he's like more memorable than the Sentinels.
Yes, that's I agree with you 100%. Hellspawn takes my number 1, although Enemy, which you didn't really get to experience very much. Enemy is very close, just because it's an obvious mix of the Xenomorphs and like Terminator. But yeah, it goes Hellspawn, Enemy, and then the Sentinels, because they're just generic robots. I mean, which is great to have for Wolverine to like kill. I mean, the Ninja Turtles did that with the Robotic Foot Clan. I mean, you never saw them use their swords on like human beings.
Yeah.
In fact, I hear in the Snake Eyes movies they're going to be fighting robots.
Well, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like the real villain of like the X-Men pilot too, it's the idea of the mutants being treated as some kind of like subhuman species. So it's not like a person per se, you know.
Whoa, you're
The
getting
Sentinels
so
are like,
deep here.
I'm just saying, the Sentinels are like, you know, the embodiment of the idea, man.
They're
But
being controlled by it's the establishment, man. The establishment.
yeah, man.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but just looking at it at the surface level, I mean, of course, and that's another thing that sets the X-Men apart from both of these teams is that, you know, there's like, you know, there's like a real theme there of segregation or oppressing that
Yeah.
none of that is in WildCATS. I mean, they're basically a team of, you know, who fight, they're a covert action team who fight aliens, and then the Ultraforce are basically the Avengers.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, again, that's why the X-Men are still around for these days, and the other two are not, sadly. Okay, so moving on. All right, which one do you think is best written?
I mean, I think I got to go with X-Men.
Okay, so number 2 spot.
I mean, I would actually say Ultraforce because I enjoyed the story of WildCATS more than the overall story, but the dialogue is god awful in WildCATS.
Yeah, WildCATS
So-
is a good premise, but poorly executed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. They were my number 2 as well, the Ultraforce. Man, I think
I bet Ultraforce is one of those shows where it probably gets much better and tighter as it goes on.
And you would be correct, sir. Although they only lasted 1 season. And I forgot to mention when we were talking about Ultraforce earlier, what happened to Malibu Comics. And that is much like Wildstorm sold out to DC, Malibu sold out to Marvel. And there was actually a time when they were trying to integrate the Malibu superheroes into the Marvel universe. So you can, if you surf those dollar bins, you can find like Ultraforce versus Avengers. You can find there's Silver Surfer versus Rune, Nightman versus Gambit. But I don't know if it was his low sales or what, but in the end, Marvel was just like, yeah, we're not going to do that any longer. And I mean,
And wasn't initially like Malibu the publisher for Image?
yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Very good work there, Yahel. You get a raise.
Oh, great.
You're getting a promotion to co-host. All right, so that leads us to the obvious question. Which was the best pilot? So since we already know the answer, also include your number 2 and go.
Sure. Yeah, X-Men for number 1 and number 2. The way I'm going to look at it is if somebody said, okay, you have to watch either WildCATS or Ultraforce again, which one would you rather watch? And it would be Ultraforce.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm actually kind of surprised to hear me say that, but the dialogue is so atrocious. And to me, even though the animation isn't quite as well done in Ultraforce, man, you can overlook sloppy or cheap animation much easier than you can overlook like terrible writing.
Man, I agree with you 100%. Of course, number 1 goes to X-Men, and number 2, Ultraforce. You should, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get a chance to talk about it again, but I encourage you to go watch the proper first episode of Ultraforce, and, you know, maybe part 2, finish part 2. You know, just so you can go to your grave saying you watched the, you know, the whole episode.
You know, I may do that. I'm still working my way through season 2 of Exo Squad, which is like 40 episodes.
Oh man, I need to get on that so we can talk about that.
Yeah, dude, it's great.
And
it's got some dialogue issues too. But once I'm done with that, that's like kind of like the one where I'll watch like a couple a week, 20 minutes like episodes before I go to bed. So maybe once I'm done with Exo Force, I'll I'll give Ultraforce a chance. Just every show I watch from now on has to have Force.
Yes, a force
second
or a
word.
squad or
Oh wait, it's Exo Squad, not Exo Force.
yeah, Exo Force was the one that Rob Liefeld tried to do. All the E-frames had pouches and
And no feet.
right, yeah, exactly.
They're always behind rocks. All the feet.
All right, well, I think we finally closed the book on who had the best superhero pilot, but by all means, please check out Ultraforce or the Ultraverse comics, because I mean I think they're pretty great, and it's weird because like there's a lot of the Ultraverse took place before the internet was a big thing, so there's not as much information out there about them, which makes them obscure. So yeah, all right, we're gonna move on to our final segment, and then that will be the end of our show.
What on earth have you been working on? It's time for Project Report.
All right, this is basically where Yahel and I talk about whatever projects we've been working on, so we can encourage ourselves in a positive and friendly way. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know we had to do that too.
Well, you know,
Encourage
positive
ourselves.
encouragement. You know, so you lazy son of a. What have you been working on?
I've still been working on my freaking Super Mario Kart video, down to the last couple of pages to edit. Thankfully, the last couple of pages, I won't need to do as much 3D CG stuff, so hopefully it'll go by a little quicker. But
Well,
yeah, that's what I've been working on.
the internet is poised with anticipation to watch it. Well, I know I am, at least. And I say that with all sincerity. Well, this isn't really a project. It's someone else's project. But I got to work one day on a feature film because that was my wife's day off, because, you know, my normal job is me watching my son. So I got to go be a production assistant on this low-budget creature feature.
Snake Eyes?
It actually is
Kevin Smith's Snake Eyes,
about
right?
snakes. Yeah, no, it's called. Well, I'll tell you that it has to do with an alligator. I probably shouldn't say the name because I guess it's, you know, still in production or whatever.
Right.
But it's about an alligator that consumes a bunch of drugs, and then proceeds to, you know, murder people.
Honestly, I don't hate it so far.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for so bad it's good, I would say it's definitely in that category.
Nice.
But it was good. I mean, it was a little high stress because they're obvious, you know, the budget is a bit low, and it's this director's first film. But yeah, I mean, once it comes out, assuming this show is still around, I will tell all of our millions of fans and subscribers about it, so you can go check it out on Amazon Prime right after you're done watching Ultraforce.
That's awesome, man. I look forward to seeing it. You always get to work on some interesting projects.
Yeah, it happens occasionally. It's a lot harder to do when you become a dad, but it does happen. And also, of course, I'm still working on my comic book with my artist. He keeps churning in some awesome pages, but man, is it it's a slow endeavor, comic book creation.
Yeah.
But yeah, but every time he turns in one, my heart skips a beat. So yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but I forgot to say what we were talking about Snake Eyes, that I had I told a friend of mine who's a big G.I. Joe fan. I asked him, like, hey, do you think it's going to be good from what you've seen or whatever? And he didn't know that it was coming out, and he was so oblivious to it, despite being a huge G.I. Joe fan, that he asked me if it was like, I'm like, hey, have you seen the images that came out for Snake Eyes? And he's like, is that like a sequel to Angel Eyes, like the Jennifer Lopez movie?
Whoa, that is
like
bizarre.
2002 or something.
And here I thought my reference to Nicolas Cage was obscure. Boy, that guy, he out-obscured me. He out-obscured me,
Yeah.
the host of Obscurity Now. I can never show my
Yeah.
face on the internet again.
Yeah, I anyways, I kind of wish it was the sequel too. It's not. It's a terrible movie too.
Yeah, but have you actually seen it?
I went to theaters to see it. I don't know why, but I remember I left about 20 minutes into it. That's the only movie I've ever walked out of.
Wow. I walked out of, the first one I ever walked out of was The Bourne Supremacy. I hated it so much.
Sorry about that.
No problem. We're about to wrap it up here. Yahel's agent is on the line. Yeah, I walked out of The Bourne Supremacy and never watched another Bourne movie after that. But speaking of walking out, I think it is time for us to walk out on the 3rd episode of Obscurity Now. Yahel, is there anything else that the people need to know before we sign off?
Kevin Smith is a fraud. No.
At least creatively bankrupt, I'd say.
Creatively, yeah, maybe that's more accurate. But no.
He's just one of those guys like Keanu Reeves that gets by on just being really nice.
Yeah. How dare he?
I know. I talked about exactly. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you would rather listen to the audio version of this, it exists in podcast form. And we will be here every Sunday on Twitch at 6 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Pacific. And of course, I'm about to play a pre-recorded video that's going to tell you all that stuff. So please subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Obscurity Now. You've been enjoying Obscurity Now, a podcast that's recorded live to tape and broadcast to Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Take us with you by following the download links provided in the show notes. And take notice of our various social media links, if that's what you're into. I'm not here to judge. And make sure you join us live next week at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific as we continue to discuss more obscure media only on Obscurity Now.